Okay, well, hello everyone. I want to introduce to you somebody that's very special to me, a beautiful soul inside and out. Her name is Janene Mondragon, and I'm going to let her tell us a little bit more about herself and where her family's from.
Well, hello, and thank you for having me meet the audience like this. My name is Janene Medina Mondragon. I was born and raised up until my junior high years in Colorado Springs, but my family is from here, from San Luis, and that's where I reside now. I live on my husband's family ranch. We're fourth generation Las Colonias ranchers up here, right above San Luis, right out of San Luis, and this is what we do. I've been working in education now for 25 years, but 23 of those years have been in New Mexico. And so I think that's another perspective of seeing where I come from, because I don't see the border. I live, geographically speaking, I live 13 miles from the New Mexico border, where we are here in Las Colonias. And so I've been blessed to be able to be an educator to our people.
That's awesome. And you make a really good point, because I think the whole point of all of this, these interviews, is to showcase people from the San Luis Valley. And when I say the San Luis Valley, I've mentioned this before, it's not geographically located to Colorado and what we know as the San Luis Valley, because our culture, our heritage, the history of our people is northern New Mexico and southern Colorado.
Right.
Encompasses all of that. And so glad you said that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your journey. What, did you always want to be a teacher?
Yes. So yes, my father's sister was a teacher in San Luis, Veronica Gold. And ever since I was the second oldest out of 23 grandchildren. And so I kind of had the responsibility of taking care of all of the other primos. And one thing that I did was I pretended I was the teacher and they were my students. And my Aunt Veronica used to bring materials from school, and I always felt like I had that in me, and I always felt like I was a good teacher early on. And so of course that's what I pursued, and I really feel that I've been successful at teaching all these years. But if there was one person, and I'm blessed to have lots of teachers in my family, both on my husband's side and my side. But if there was one person who was the most influential as far as me going into education, it would have had to have been my Aunt Veronica. And yeah, so I've always wanted to be a teacher. And as soon as I graduated from high school here in San Luis, I decided I used to dance folklorico. Even when I lived in Colorado Springs, I was part of a dance group there. I danced here when I was younger, just for our Santana festivals or different. I remember there were a few Cinco de Mayo festivities in Alamosa, so I would be invited there to dance. And so when I graduated from high school, I went with the intention of becoming a dance teacher to the university in Pueblo. However, there was no such thing as a degree in dance. And so my professor said, well, why don't you teach physical education, and you can teach rhythmic activities if you want to teach. So that's where my first degree came from, was exercise physiology. My bachelor's degree was in exercise physiology, and that was through Adams University, because Adams State back then. And so I did come back home, and I finished my first bachelor's degree at Adams State, and then I needed to take courses for teacher education. So in doing that, I got another degree, bachelor's degree in psychology, along with my certification to teach in Colorado. And at that point, I was a newlywed. I had my second child, and as a baby, I needed to find a place that I could work close, but still be able to have my child around me. And if you live here in San Luis, there's only one school. So I honestly believe that that's where I was going to teach. And I used to do a lot of after-school programs at Centennial High School here in San Luis. And it just so happened that a friend of mine that lives in Costilla told me that they were looking for teachers to teach in the small little elementary school there in Costilla. And just happenstance, I went and I applied and I got the job, the position. Never thought I'd be teaching in New Mexico. And as a result, have been there ever since, really, not just in the Cuesta School District, but within this Cuesta School District, I taught preschool all the way through high school. And I tutor GED students, adult students. So I've taught at every grade level in New Mexico. And 3 years ago, I thought I was, and through that journey, through becoming a teacher in New Mexico, one of the challenges of becoming a teacher in New Mexico is, especially if you work at the elementary, if you teach at the elementary level, is you need to have a bilingual endorsement. And La Prueba was the practice that we had to take to get the endorsement. And several times, and I'm not ashamed to admit this anymore because before it bothered me to even talk about it, but several times that I took the prueba, I was able to pass every single part, and there are 6 parts, there used to be 6 parts back then, except for the conversational part. And so I couldn't get my bilingual endorsement, and that was always a challenge for me in New Mexico. And looking back, it was probably a godsend that because I might have been on a different path, and rightly so, wherever that path would have led me. But because of that, I started teaching at the secondary level. And so junior high and high school, you didn't have to have your endorsement, your bilingual endorsement, but you needed to have a TESOL, which was teaching English to second language learners. And I had all the qualifications for that, so I got that. And one thing that I decided to do, because I was mentoring teachers at the secondary level, was I decided I was going to go for my master's degree. And a catalyst for getting my master's degree was being selected as a Golden Apple teacher in New Mexico. And that's a fellowship, it's a national fellowship, but that accolade really did push me to want to help my fellow teachers even more so. And so I became a teacher of teachers. And that was always my aspiration anyway. I wanted, I love teaching, but over the years, and especially at the secondary level, I realized how much I can affect change in the schools and education by helping my teachers. And so I received my master's degree in curriculum instruction and assessment with an emphasis in literacy. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go for my doctorate. And I decided I'm ready for retirement. I'm going to leave the classroom so I could dedicate my studies, my postgraduate, my energies to postgraduate education. And I left the classroom, and that summer I was approached by a former administrator that I had worked with, asking if I would be interested in working within 5 different school districts in northern New Mexico as a vocational transition specialist. And I knew that I would not only be working with students, but I'd be working with teachers as well to help them help their students through this process. So I thought I saw this as a natural progression. And through that journey, it's enlightened my focus for my dissertation. And I'm actually in the dissertation process right now. Hopefully by May, I'll have my doctorate, God willing. So it's still a process. Well, this summer, I was in that position for 3 years, vocational transition specialist. And it was delivering pre-employment services to high school students that were on individualized education plans. And so it was a different way that I saw education. As educators, we always work with children with disabilities and children who are on special individualized plans. But this was a complete different focus for me because that was all I was working with. And it kind of sparked a lot of things that I wanted to do in my doctorate program. And so I decided in April that I was going to go ahead and just put in for retirement so I could finish my doctorate. And just about a month ago, hasn't been a full month, I was approached by another administrator if I would be interested in becoming a literacy coach. There's a structured literacy program that is coming to fruition finally in New Mexico and at the elementary level. And so I'm considering taking that position. So again, I'm not going to retire. And again, I realized that, they say teaching is the calling. It keeps calling me. It keeps calling me back.
That's because they need you. Oh my gosh.
Well, and I think, that's a blessing to me because here I felt like I had all these challenges of not being able to maybe get the endorsements that I needed at the elementary level. There's a reason why things happen. And even though luckily I've never met with those types of barriers, speaking with families who only speak Spanish. I know a little bit of sign, and I've been able to help, sign in some meetings for some of my students. So, even if I didn't pass that test, I still consider myself bilingual, albeit probably not formal, Spanish that I can speak. But I'm proud of, being able to have that journey, those challenges that kind of put me in different situations to give me what I have right now.
Wow, I'm so amazed. Like, just to give a little bit of a background. So I've known Janene probably my whole life. And she was my cheerleading coach. So when she says she did after school activities, that was one of them. And that was always so much fun. And I've always known her to be, just a go-getter in whatever she's interested in pursuing. She always goes for it and does it. You were the first Santana Queen, weren't you? That we had.
Not the first, but the first where we actually had a pageant.
Right?
Yeah,
yeah. And so, and then I remember her getting her first. Was it your bachelor's or was it your teaching license? It was one or the other.
I got my bachelor's degree first, and then when I went back to get my teaching license, I finished my my bachelor's degree for psychology.
Okay.
And so I received my second degree during that time.
So two bachelor's degrees, a master's degree, and now a doctorate. I had no idea. That is so cool. And she's also my prima-in-law because she's married to my prima. So we have all these really cool connections, and I'm really just so proud of you. So excited. Oh my gosh! Everything that you've done is it's an inspiration. So
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your journey. A couple of questions. Tell me a little bit more about your dissertation and what you are studying and what you hope to do with the work that you're doing with that.
The focus 2 years ago when I began doing my work in the doctorate program, my focus was on digital literacies. And the focus mostly being how we use social media, how we teach social media skills, communication skills. And now during this COVID situation, I have actually tweaked my focus a little bit. And what I will be doing my study on is how teachers have approached teaching with social media and teaching social media skills during this imposed online situation, education situation. And so that again is it was a challenge because I wasn't too sure, how am I going to do my study when people aren't even going to be in school? And then I realized that, this information can actually help add to the literature that we need to make curricular changes in education, because this entire situation, the COVID situation, I'm honestly seeing this as not a moment. I'm seeing this as a movement. And, there has to be a paradigm shift in the way we approach curriculum and instruction. And I was in a unique position now as a transition specialist, now during the last part of the school year, working with students and working with teachers and working with administrators and working with families. I saw commonalities of what they were all struggling with as we were remotely learning. And I realized, one of the common themes amongst us all was the mental wellness part of all of it. And, that is another part that I'm trying to bring into my dissertation as well, into my research and my writing. The anxiety and the trepidation and the feelings of unsureness that everybody has been experiencing, that I've worked with. I was working with 5 different districts, so I did have a gamma of cultures, because in New Mexico there are so many different cultures, even just here in the northern part of the state. And there were these commonalities, of certain things that it just blew my mind, thinking, what, we're all, when you hear, it is cliche anymore, we're all in this together. Everybody was experiencing the same thing. And the mental wellness was a part of it. Another aspect of this that I've been able to see, and that I'm actually also, I'm using this to my advantage, with my dissertation, but was that, because curriculum development is what not only that's what my master's is in, but it is also what my the doctorate program that I'm in is in curriculum instruction and assessment. And we need to change the way, because of this COVID situation, I believe that we need to change the way in which we approach curriculum, because traditionally we've always used this technology as an add-on in our classes. And now all of a sudden we're using this as the means, as the conduit, as the way we reach each other and we communicate with each other. And learning management systems, for people who take courses online, children and adults, this is a complete different situation, because yes, although we've had, the Google Classrooms, a lot of schools in New Mexico couldn't use Zoom, but there were a lot of schools that were also using social media platforms for discussion and so those are a lot of things that we need to start looking at as far as developing curriculum online, because FERPA regulations, those are the rights that students have, privacy rights, ethical considerations, all of those things have to be looked at. And we're going to be, we're already in a situation where we're unsure. Yeah. And where there's uncertainty, there's doubt, and we can't doubt ourselves. We have to believe that this is something that we can, like I said, it's a movement, and this, even, God willing, this virus goes away quickly. I shouldn't say goes away, that we're manageable, that it's manageable in the ways that we can continue to be healthy. I sincerely hope that the way that we're learning about how to communicate on social media, ethically, that we look at content on social media in critical ways, that we look for credibility, but that we learn how to communicate ethically and with citizenship, because we have people in our government that use social media to communicate with the masses, and we've never had a formal education on how to communicate on social media. Right. And right now during this pandemic, this is there are probably unprecedented numbers, and I'm finding that out. There's a lot of research. There are numbers of people using social media for educational purposes as well. So we need to have that focus on literacy, not just digital literacy, but literacy on social media.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's the way that things are moving right now, and I think our kids, even my kids, they seem to be wired for it, much more than I am, and the older generations have been, and so I completely agree with you, and I think the more that we do that, the easier this type of thing can be addressed. And so it just, I guess in that same vein, what are your thoughts about the fall, and do you think that online learning is the way to go? I know we've been doing online learning in different capacities for several decades now, and I think people are doing it really well. And so what are your thoughts on that? Or do you think we need to be back in the classroom?
Oh, even when I took this new position, I wasn't in the classroom, and I missed my babies a lot, even though most of them were bigger than me. But I foresee, and this is actually just from conversations that I've heard from the Department of Education in Colorado and New Mexico, there probably is more than likely, there'll be some sort of a hybrid situation where, we have on-campus activity as well as online. But nevertheless, that online component is going to be a big part of it. And so the professional development that we need for our teachers has to happen. Well, it already is happening. Even through all of this, I've been fortunate to be in contact with a lot of different UNM in Albuquerque. They've provided ECHO. It's Project ECHO, but what they've done is they've provided a lot of professional development for teachers in New Mexico, and so and there are so many more. I mean, that was just one that came to mind. But so professional development for teachers. But also in all of these shifts in thinking that I was talking about, I'm hoping that there is more research done on that, and I'm trying to add to that research. That these are things that we need to start implementing quick, and this online situation is going to be a part of it, even if we do, can begin to go back to brick and mortar, But yeah, I don't know. It's still unsure, but we cannot be doubtful that this is going to be something that we're going to persevere through. And as a whole in education, that's one of the beautiful things that I see about education is, yes, there is a lot of administrative issues, and sometimes political issues, but the focus is always the same, and it's always just what's best for our students and our teachers. And that includes family, that includes administrators, that includes, everyone. So, political things aside, and that's something that we're going into, now we're going to be voting in a few months for a president of the United States. And those are things that are going to be at the forefront of a lot of people's decisions on how they vote in local people, at the state level. And it's the shift or the focus on education, because of course, that's my bias. Education is something that I always look for in a candidate. What is your position? What do you? But it's all going to depend. Going back to school in the fall is all going to depend on how we're preparing our teachers.
I completely agree, and I think again, there's been decades of data that show that there are people that are doing it well, and we need to be trained on those best practices. I know that there's got to be models that are reaching kids and working with families and helping them teach at their own pace. I know this is something near and dear to my heart is the differentiation between kids who may struggle, kids who are on point, and then we've got gifted and talented kids, and people, or some kids are higher in one level than they are in another. And I think some of this online work can really be a conduit to making that process much easier, and reaching those kids and helping them move forward, and giving the support where it's needed and that kind of thing. So I completely agree with you, and I really hope that that's something that we push forward toward.
Right. Thank you for saying that, because so much is focused in curriculum development on content, on a content area. But what you just said right now speaks to how much we need to focus on metacognitive skills, developing those types of self-awareness skills in students. And there have been a lot of teachers that have done this over the years. And in teacher education courses, the pedagogy that we learn, it includes classroom management, but also, all these different learning styles. Well, a lot of these learning styles can't be done via computer. Or can they?
Right.
And so those are things that we need to do. But one thing that I have noticed, and I'm so glad you said this, because this is another thing that I've noticed a lot with my students and the teachers that I've been working with, we've learned how to adapt. And when I talk about the metacognitive skills, we're learning what works best for us, and how we work, how we learn, how we teach. And teaching and learning is synonymous in my mind, and how there can be that respect. Because you also mentioned earlier about, kids, this Gen X, Gen Z, these digital natives that we think are proficient in the technology that we use. And that's another thing that I've noticed too, that there are some that they struggle. And it could be just the navigation of a platform, or but we all have to learn how we learn, and those are some of the skills, some of the professional development that we can help with our teachers, so they can help with their students, so they can help their students realize that.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the things that really pushed me this past spring when I was teaching is this. I guess this is the silver lining that I got from COVID when I was teaching, was that I hadn't been in the physical classroom for many years. And so technology was, as you said, it was an add-on. It was something that we did just for, activities, just to kind of emphasize a certain concept, but it wasn't our mode. And so what this forced me to do was get online and learn about what other, links are out there. What are some of the really, because I teach foreign language, I teach Spanish. And so what are the websites? What are the places that are already out there that are doing cool things, that are making, instructional videos and creating games and activities and fun stuff to reinforce what the concepts that I had been teaching them all along. And so now I have a little toolbox, a small toolbox, but it also forced me to learn, how to use these types of platforms to communicate with my students better as well. Google Classroom was not what I used when I taught before at all. And so really, again, it forced me to get in there and just, dive in and get as much training on the job as I could, to try to use it to the best of my ability to reach the kids that I could. And so, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you just said something that sparked, yeah.
No, it's just, that's the silver lining for me. And there's so much out there. That's why I say it's,
right.
There's so many best practice ideas and so many best practice, instructional models, I think, that we could really learn and benefit from, and that our kids in turn and our families will benefit from.
Right.
So yeah.
You said, you mentioned about the students that you could reach.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another common, and actually I would, not just in the schools that I worked with, it was a common theme, was, but I would hear it on news and read it, but was the equity. There's technological inequality. I worked with, all of my schools were in rural areas, and our school districts, we were lucky enough to get a lot of technology to the students, devices to the students, However, there were so many barriers with Wi-Fi or with, even access, even a cell phone signal. So the equity in technology is something that really has to be addressed before the fall as well. And again, those could even be legislative things. Can we put more towers? I mean, people don't want more towers, but how can we ensure that every student has the ability to reach that teacher?
Exactly.
We always say, can I reach those students? Can I reach those students? Well, it's reciprocal. And that was, the inequality in that alone was something that we had never really considered.
Well, I think that's an important point that you bring up, and it's something that the rural and the urban have in common. I'm in the Denver metro area, but there were 2,500 kids in the district that I work in that did not have access, whether it was Wi-Fi or a device. And so they could not make our teaching. They couldn't make the students accountable to what we were instructing at that point. And I've said this in other interviews that I've done, but again, my principal likened this whole situation as flying in a plane as we're constructing it, right? So and I can't, it's a perfect analogy. And so, we did the best that we could, but now we have time to, and actually our time is dwindling, because we're a month, away from August when school is starting. But we have time to do this and do this well, I think. And I think utilizing, again, the best practice models that we know are out there, getting access for those kids, whether they're in the urban or in the rural areas, for different reasons they didn't have access, but making sure that is like the focus, because again, it's going to be a hybrid model, and we can't not have accountability anymore. That was in the spring when this came up, spontaneously on us, but now we know we were expecting it, and we have to address that. And so
you're right. With as fast, and you just said it, with as fast as it's come upon us, we can't lose that momentum. Mm-hmm. Because you're, like you said, a month away, and that just blew my mind right there too. It's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be quick tomorrow. But we can't lose that momentum. We can't wait for things to happen.
Yeah.
So wow, there's a lot to do.
There's so much to do. Yeah, we're up for the job, right?
We got this. Yeah. and supporting each other is a big part of it.
Yeah. So when you say, I'm glad you said supporting each other, that brings up another point. So I have actually two questions for you, but I'm going to ask this one first. And the first one is self-care. What are some of the things that you do for self-care? Because this is a lot. And I mean, again, you have come major way through, and accomplished so much. And what have you learned as far as self-care? And
are you talking about the pandemic during this?
All of it. I mean, just like I said, even the journey that you've been on, getting two bachelor's degrees, your master's degrees, you're going for your doctorate. You had children along the way. You have a grandbaby, so you have a farm. You have a lot of stuff going on in your life. You've got families and I know as a teacher we become we're wired to care and to think about. It doesn't turn off at 5 o'clock or at 2:30 or 3:30 when the kids go home and we go home. This is something that's continually on our minds.
Yeah, it turns back on at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Sometimes, right? And so what is it that you do to keep yourself in a space that you can continue to give?
I think you just mentioned it right there. All of the things that make Janene who she is, my family, our farm, my husband, my teaching, my friends, my everything, it has to be equal. There has to be a balance. Mm. If I give too much focus and too much energy, and this has happened a lot now during this doctoral journey. I mean, there are times that I have been sitting for 5 or 6 hours doing research and writing, and then I realized, oh my God, I haven't even moved.
Yeah.
You know, and thank goodness I have to go to the restroom, because that's what gets me up. But you know, honestly, it's and those are the times that I don't feel healthy. So I need to create that balance, and that in itself is a job. That's a chore. During the shutdown, you know, I haven't been able just to take off to see my hito in Pueblo, you know, my grandbaby. I haven't been able just to, you know, do this or that. And so it's trying to keep that balance even now is very difficult. But I can, you know, create that through a Snapchat, you know, with the baby, or, you know, a conversation online with somebody, or not. The self-care for me has been to balance everything out. And it's not easy, but you have to consciously do that, because otherwise something is going to take all of that energy, and those are the things personally that pull me down. So, you know, sometimes there's a lot on the plate, but as long as, you know, it's you know, it's equal. I don't want to have those balandares on the side of my plate that's going to keep the food from falling off.
Yeah.
I don't want it tipping. I need to make sure that nothing's going to fall off, that it's just equal. And that for me is self-care. And that includes, you know, a facial for myself, or putting oil on my hair, or doing my toenails, or, you know, yes, all of that is included in that. And a person just has, personally for me, I have to make time to do it. But I try to eat well. I don't exercise as much as I should, but I try, you know, even if it's turning on the music and dancing.
So, oh yeah, I love that. I do that every time I do housework.
Yeah. But I just had to learn how to wear some sort of shoes, because being flat-footed doesn't help. But anyway, yeah. But that's what I do, and it's not easy. But I think everybody, again, you know, you have to find what works for you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I love the dancing. I love the facials. I love the toenail stuff. Yeah, all of that stuff. A little bit of wine and chocolate don't hurt either. So. Oh,
definitely. Yeah, the chocolate doesn't give me a headache, so sometimes I overindulge in the chocolate.
See? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've learned to be better about that too. I have a taste for the higher percentages, like the 88% dark chocolate stuff.
Yeah, I do too.
So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, and I just want to talk about the Golden Apple Award that you talked about earlier, and I want to ask you, what was the criteria for receiving that award, and what do they look for in a candidate? And you said it's a fellowship, and what kind of work did you do with that afterwards?
Thank you for asking, because actually I'm very involved in the fellowship at the national level, and at the New Mexico, at the state level. So in 2012, I received an accolade. I received an award from the New Mexico School Board Association for students' achievement. So, you know, that was based on student scores and what I did in the classroom. And because of that was in 2012, because of that, I was, I guess, noticed, as all teachers should be. But I was given a little bit of I was focused on to have a teacher from the northern part of New Mexico to be nominated for the Golden Apple Award. And I got it. The criteria was they look for student achievement. They look for how you help your colleagues, what you contribute to education through, through activity, through community work. There were a lot of different categories that, you had to make sure that you fit. And I felt fortunate that I really didn't have to work at trying to do any of those things because I was already doing it. And coming from a small school and a small community, you kind of do wear all those hats, especially in a school, so I was doing a lot and got recognized for it. The fellowship, the Academy in New Mexico, every year, so we contribute as fellows in different ways. We do professional development for teachers. We, in fact, through this ECHO presentation that I was talking about through UNM, that was one way that the Golden Apple Fellowship got involved. I do everything in the state of New Mexico, from reading hundreds of papers from students that are trying to get an award. There's a Aldo Leopoldo Award in New Mexico for conservancy and ecological issue. It's it's really encompassing, but there are a lot of students who apply for this award, and I'm, as a Golden Apple Award, as a fellow, I go ahead and I help read some of the entries and help them, determine winners, and just different things in education that we can help with. I've never been to a national conference or gathering, although I do keep in touch with a lot of the national fellows. But the Golden Apple Award is given to 7 teachers yearly, mm-hmm. And I was just fortunate to have been one of those teachers. Like I said earlier, that is really what helped me realize personally that I could go so much further, that I'm not just going to retire from teaching and then, I'm done. And that's, like I said, when I realized that I'm going to just do all my postgraduate work. So, yeah.
Well, that is so awesome. So I'm sorry?
I said, I feel like I went in a circle with that, but.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, it's really cool. So that means that, once you're part of the Golden Apple program, you can be as involved as you want to be, or are there just certain responsibilities that come along with it, and for a certain amount of time, or?
Yes, all of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, so each member is involved as much as they can be. Okay. Yes, there is a responsibility as a fellow to keep up your membership in the form of duty and responsibility and contribution to education. Mm-hmm. And even through my doctorate work, I've been in touch with a lot of my fellow Golden Apple recipients, and it's amazing how much energy we give to each other to keep going. Let's do this. I have this idea. Let's do this. So yeah, I mean, it is as much as we want to put in, but I see it not only as an obligation, I see it as self-fulfilling, mm-hmm. and that's all right. We got to do it for ourselves.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
It makes me feel good.
That's amazing. And the last thing is, I want to go back and talk about your Aunt Veronica, because I remember her. I was probably, first, second grade maybe. And Jerry Gold, her son, is my classmate and a good friend of mine, even though we haven't seen each other in many, many years. But yeah, she was Sally Chavez, some of those teachers from back then were just amazing teachers and people, period. And so I can definitely see how she was your inspiration, because I do remember her, and even the short amount of time that I knew her, she made a difference, and that's what great teachers do. And I'm so proud of you, and I know the community that you work with is just blessed, because you are one of those people too. Just based on everything that you're saying, I could just see that. So just the last thing I have to ask is just if there is any piece of advice that you would give anyone watching right now that either wants to follow in your footsteps or isn't sure about, even the path that they want to take, even if it's not through education. What kind of advice or what nugget do you have to offer that person that you've received? Or even your own, I don't know.
There's probably a lot.
Tell us all of it.
How much time do you have?
Yes, I know.
For anybody who wants to to persevere in education. And I think this is with any career path that you choose. But certainly in education, it has to be a desire and a want to do better, to make better, to create better. You know, you have to have that desire to want better for the world. And I think if you have that innately, you're cut out to be in education. But I think if you have that innately, you know what, you're going to be doing the best you can in any career that you choose. And to always realize that there are people that are out there that are going to support you, but you need to take that support. You need to use it. So that would be a piece of advice is, you know, when I mentioned, you know, these accolades that I got, that I received, even that in the form of support, you know, you have to look at these things as a way to push you further to do what you want to do. So look for that support. Don't think that it's just going to be a blatant thing that's right there, because most of the time the support is around us, whether they're people, whether they're, you know, tangible items, whether they're experiences, but the support is there. You just need to realize it and use it to go where you want to go.
That's so true. And I love how you say that, because so many times we think of an award or an accolade as like the end result of something that we do. But what you just said is that it's sort of like a starting point even for pushing
Right.
what you want to do even more forward. So yeah, I like that. Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. You made it sound better.
I got it from you.
That's the writer in you. Thank you.
Well, it's been so wonderful talking with you. We need to talk more often, for sure.
I know. The last time we met face to face was at the farm, and that was such a beautiful setting to be there, you know, to visit. So we got to do that again when all of this clears up.
Yes, hopefully soon. I need to be home. I need to get in the fresh air and be around my gente and my familia. So yes.
And home needs you too.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again, and it's just been a pleasure talking with you and getting all this awesome information. And again, I'm just so proud of all the work that you've done and the work that you've done up to now, and just can't wait to see what happens in the future. I want to see that dissertation. And
oh, me too.
Best wishes. I know it's tough, especially the last stretch I hear is really tough, but you got it. You got this, girl.
Thank you. See, there's that support. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for this platform. Thank you for all of this. Peace be with you.
Thank you. Love you.
Care. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been a La Gente Legacy production and the Successful in the SLV series. Stay tuned for more.